Om Jnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
We just had a long kirtan. Krishna Kirtan, Prabhu led kirtan from about almost 1 hour. Actually, since Mangalati, if you include the japa, it's just been kirtan. So that was quite a long kirtan, Krishna Kirtan, Prabhu led. It was not, as we call that, a long kirtan. Because in the temples, usually we have a very rigid program. We have to finish everything on time. Because everyone's busy with various services. So at least sometimes it's good to not be busy and just chant Hare Krishna. Have long kirtans. How long is a long kirtan? 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours? 4 hours is pretty long kirtan. Actually, in the early days of our movement, that's what devotees did. They did kirtan all day. They'd have a morning program, go out for Harinam Sankirtan, come back up for lunch, go out for Harinam Sankirtan again, come back and have an evening program, and that was the program. There were lots of hoarse voices and hands all smashed up from playing the mridanga. One devotee who was, he joined a ISKCON party in Bangladesh. He was actually a professional kirtaniya before he joined. So his specialty was mridanga. He was a mridanga. But of course he also sang. But whenever his speaking voice was just like he had a bunch of gravel in his throat. Because from doing so much kirtan, his vocal cords have become disarrayed. So how long is a long kirtan? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Kirtaniya Sada Harihi, the holy name should always be chanted. So, long kirtan means whole life. And even then it doesn't stop. Because devotee doesn't die, but goes on performing kirtan. Devotee has no other function than performing kirtan. His whole life is meant for, his whole existence is meant for glorifying Krishna. So, that's why we call it the Sankirtan movement. Because even if we're not directly performing kirtan by opening our mouths and enunciating the names of Krishna, all activities are meant for glorification. In this moment, all activities are meant for glorification of Krishna. Sometimes here in South India, people find it a little difficult to relate to our kirtan, although they respect it. As we saw last night, as we were coming around the Agraharam, all the Brahmin families, they came out to see, and many, especially ladies, they offered obeisances, which is unusual. In Bengal and Orissa, where the culture of kirtan is very strong, and people, then it's common for people to bow down when they see a kirtan party. But in South India, I think some places, but here in Srirangam more. So that's very gratifying to see that appreciation. Although, as I was saying, in South India, many people, they appreciate, but they find it difficult themselves. They don't feel so much inclined to start jumping around and dancing in kirtan, singing out loudly, because the mood here is very much one that we should approach God with great respect, which is true. We should approach Him with great respect. That is the beginning of Bhakti, to have great respect for the Lord. So in Bhakti, there's the devotees, they take great pleasure in hearing about the pastimes of Krishna, but they maintain a spirit of great respect. So that pleasure that devotees experience in hearing about the Lord, in serving Him, in seeing His divine form, that is Bhakti Rasa. And when that becomes Unatajvala Rasa, when it becomes inflamed, when it becomes very great, that pleasure, then one automatically sings loudly and dances. Srila Prabhupada has written that in our Krishna conscious movement, this dancing and chanting is very important. Well, that's an understatement, isn't it? It's an understatement. It's of course it's true, but to express it more, you have to underline the words very and important about 20 million times. Because there's no meaning to a Sankirtan movement without Sankirtan. Sankirtan, of course, there are different manifestations of that. But the ultimate expression of Sankirtan is chanting the names of Krishna and dancing for his pleasure in the association of devotees. So this is the ultimate goal of life. As Srila Prabhupada, he was once asked, what does this chanting lead to? Srila Prabhupada replied, more chanting. The Mayavadis, they have a perverted understanding of bhakti. If people come to us and say they're following some Mayavadi, we'll say very bad. But if Vaishnava devotees, they meet a Mayavadi guru and he'll say, oh, you're doing bhakti, very good. So it seems that they are more liberal. Their idea is that you do bhakti, that's good for you because you're on a lower level. And then when you come to the higher level, you'll understand that you are God. You're offering incense to Krishna, and there comes a point when you say, okay Krishna, now you get down, I'll get up, and you offer incense to me. So this idea of bhakti is not at all bhakti. Both bhakti, by chanting the holy names of the Lord, and Mayavad, they're very powerful influences in traditional Arya culture. This is called the Arya Vaisya something or other. Arya Vaisya, what's it called? Dharamshala. So Arya culture. That's a traditional word for Hindu. Actually, they use Arya. What is nowadays called Hinduism. That's the traditional word is Arya. But of course, there's this Arya Samaj. They put their own misunderstanding on it. So anyway, in traditional Indian culture, you'll find it was a common thing that many people used to chant the holy names of the Lord. Last night, after we entered the temple of Srirangam, and on the left there was one. Actually, we hadn't entered the temple. We went to one of the Gopurams, and on the left was one where the first Sannidhi on the left. So we went in there, and there were a group of people chanting Vishnu Sahasranam. And I've seen it seems to be quite a widespread practice here in South India, not only in Vaishnava temples, but in all kinds of temples. That people after coming home from work in the evening, they go to the temple and together they chant Vishnu Sahasranam. And apart from this kind of formal chanting, there are many people who, they're just out of habit, they'll go and say Narayana, Narayana. Not only in South India, everywhere. Ram, Ram, Hey Ram. That was the common greeting among different people in India. Some Jai Shri Ram or Jai Shri Krishna. In Gujarat that was common. Jai Shri Krishna. When you meet someone, just like we'll say hello, the common thing was to say Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ram, Narayana. The night watchmen, they would chant throughout the night different names. So the culture of bhakti was very strong throughout India. But it was mixed with Mayavad. To a large extent it was mixed with Mayavad. So that if you speak to these people, some of you will all night be saying Narayana, Narayana, smoking bidis, but going on chanting Narayana. But if you speak with them, you'll find they have a completely Mayavad understanding. So this kirtan is contaminated. This idea that all the gods are the same, we are all God, is not really bhakti at all. That chanting is not kirtaniya sadahari. The idea is that you chant now and become God later. The idea, kirtaniya sadahari, means that now we're chanting, even when we become liberated, we'll go on chanting. There's no end to the chanting. One who chants with that attitude is already liberated. Whereas one who chants with the idea of becoming liberated and then stopping chanting, they'll never get real mukti. Devotees, they don't talk about mukti. They're interested in serving Krishna. So actual chanting is with the attitude to want to serve Krishna. That is the attitude to be cultivated. That is why the pure devotees, automatically they chant the name of Krishna. And that is why we have difficulty chanting Hare Krishna. All the time, so often devotees ask, my mind is wandering what? I'm trying to chant, but the mind is wandering. What is it wandering to? It's wandering to thoughts of not serving Krishna. So kirtan should go on with the attitude of serving Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he ordered to chant 1 lakh names every day. That means about 60 rounds of the Mahamantra every day. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that was the standard for the devotees living in his mats. You must all chant 1 lakh names every day. One of his sannyasi disciples asked him that, well, you say everyone should chant 1 lakh names a day, but apart from you, I don't see anyone here who's doing that. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied that you don't see, but I see. So it wasn't the kind of response which invited more inquiry. It was not the kind of response that invited more inquiry. In other words, if you're from that kind of reply, it's not something that you want to go on questioning. It's like, so this devotee was confused. Because he didn't see anyone chanting 1 lakh of names. He saw everyone's busy in service all day. And actually in the Gaudiya Math, up to today, they don't have any japa period like we have in Islam. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to keep his disciples very busy. So later on this devotee explained that later by grace of Guru, I understood this. That those who are, by being busy in service, that's not different from chanting. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's recommendation was you chant at least something on the beads every day, and while you are performing service, you go on chanting. And if you get extra time, then you can chant more on beads. At the same time, he was very insistent. Everyone must chant 1 lakh of names every day. It's just like once Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, you must read my books every day for 2 hours. Minimum. So he said, well, Prabhupada, I'm so busy, I don't have time. So Prabhupada said, well, cut down your sleep. He said, well, I'm only sleeping 5 hours out of 24. So Prabhupada said, sleep less, read more. So that might seem that's unreasonable, unfair, abuse. And Srila Prabhupada was pushing us toward Kirtaniya Sadahari, always absorbed, always chanting, always absorbed in service. So devotee means full-time devotee. I heard there was some Tamil saying that a Brahmin is 100% Brahmin when he's in public. When he's at home, he's 50% Brahmin. When no one can see him, he's 0% Brahmin. So we don't want to be that kind of devotee. Actually, there's no such thing as a part-time devotee. You get an advertisement, temple president, so many thousands of dollars per month, 4 weeks holiday, and all this kind of thing. The devotees don't have holidays. Of course we come sometimes like this festival, but that means more service. one of my godbrothers, he was with us he'd actually left ISKCON and gone to join some Babaji group. And then he came back and joined us in Bangladesh. And one day he said, well, I've had enough of bhakti in this life. I've done enough of this life. He said, I've had enough of bhakti for this life. So he went back to New York, where he came from, and became one of the 12 million or so New Yorkers again. But there's no finish in bhakti. One who thinks like that means he said, now I'm finished with bhakti, means he never really started actually. Because bhakti begins with surrender. Dikha kale bhakta kale akta samarpan. Initiation means to surrender oneself. So if there's no actual atma samarpan or surrender, then bhakti never really begins. If we're thinking 50% for Krishna, 50% for me, that's not bhakti. At least not the bhakti that Rupa Goswami has taught. We don't hear of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu having an ecstatic long kirtan and stopping after 1 hour for a tea break. There's no such thing. Of course, they would relax after kirtan, but that would also be everything Krishna conscious. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was relaxing after performing kirtan at Rath Yatra. Prataparudra Maharaj came and performed charan seva, massaging his feet, and recited verses of Srimad Bhagavatam to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was reciting verses from the Gopi Gita, which describe the gopis' ecstatic feelings for Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very satisfied and embraced Prataparudra Maharaj for showering this nectar of Krishna's pastimes upon him. Now, if Prataparudra Maharaj had started telling the story of Nala and Damayanti, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't be so pleased. Which, although it's in Mahabharata, it's a mundane love story. It's a romantic story. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he liked to hear about Krishna, and not just in any hodgepodge way. Bhakti Siddhanta Viruddha Arasabhas Shunile Prabhu Chitte Nahoyolash. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to hear about Krishna, but not if there was some deviant philosophical understanding or wrongly presented according to the science of rasa. Yesterday we were singing one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's kirtans, in which he speaks of Gaura Vihita Kirtan, the kirtan which is approved by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Puri, which is the place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, his main place of pastimes, there is a particular group who identify themselves as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they regularly go around the city performing kirtan. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur called that the Chuchur Kirtan, or the Kirtan of rats. It's not exactly a rat, it's that mole, that little mole that comes out, the blind thing, it looks like a rat. It looks like a mouse, but it's blind. Anyway, just say rat's kirtan. So people think, these are very good, they're doing kirtan. But they invented some new mantra. They don't chant the Maha Mantra. They think that they have some theory that the Maha Mantra should not be chanted loudly. So actually they're envious of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He came to spread the loud chanting of Hare Krishna, and pretending to glorify him, they say that the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra should not be chanted loudly. So when we object to these things, they say, you're offending Vaishnavas. But no, they are offensive, and we should point that out. It's not that everything is all the same. It might appear that they're very sincere in their practices, but they're not, because they're attracted to that which is not pleasing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So to understand all these points properly, there has to be Gaura Vihita Shravan, or hearing in the manner ordained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Before there can be Gaura Vihita Kirtan, there has to be Gaura Vihita Shravan. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he didn't allow everybody to join his kirtan in Navadvip. And even in Puri, he would perform kirtan, but he associated with his devotees. Often we arrange programs and we invite important people of the world to speak, maybe like the mayor of the city or something like this. But inevitably they talk nonsense because that's all they know. Unless we're trained in the science of bhakti, even if we think we want to praise a devotee, then we don't know how to do it actually. One scholar he's actually a Western priest who was teaching philosophy in Calcutta. So after listening to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for some time, he said, I'm very impressed by your lofty ideas. Lofty means high level. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur immediately rebuked him and said, it's not ideas, it's fact. That means that he was listening and he was impressed by it, but he hadn't actually understood anything. He said, I'm impressed by your ideas. That means he's listening and he's thinking, well, this is his theory, and I have my theory, and someone else has another theory. His theory is quite good. That's why actual hearing begins when one is ready to surrender and accept. Sarvam etad vitam manye yang mang vadasi Keshava. Just like Arjuna accepted, Krishna, everything you say, I accept as truth. If we think it's just an idea, and then someone else has another idea, then we can't enter into the truth, the reality that's being spoken. The great devotees, they don't speak anything of this world. It's not just another blah 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 blah, everyone's speaking that, just something concocted from the three modes of material nature. Just like the crows are, what's the word for crow in Tamil? Yeah, they're doing that sound. Ka, 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 ka. That's why they're called ka. So why does a crow go like that? Why does a crow make that sound? That sounds like a stupid question, doesn't it? You don't expect a crow to bark like a dog. The crow has to make that sound. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahamkara vimudha makartahamiti manyate. Just as the animal is forced to act as an animal, so the bewildered spirit soul is forced by the modes of nature to talk all nonsense. Someone thinks, I have a very original idea, original, something new, something different. It might seem new to you, but it's another regurgitated offering from Maya. You know what regurgitated means? It means what you vomit up. This Airtel advertisement is express yourself. Yeah. It means just like a crow. You wah, wah, wah. Oh, it's so wonderful, I did this. All rubbish. Rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. They think this Periyar made a great contribution to the thought of the world by saying, there is no God, there is no God, there is no God. But why make a statue for him? He's not the first one to say that. There have been so many atheists in the history of the world. Meanwhile, God is sitting in His kingdom saying, there is no Periyar, there is no Periyar, there is no Periyar. He's become a crow somewhere. And just he's saying there is no God, and the crow is saying, ka, ka, ka. Why is the crow saying ka, ka, ka? Because in the previous life he said, there is no God. When the crow is calling out, what is he? He's expressing himself. You should listen to me, listen to my voice, it's so beautiful. So like that, everyone is expressing their foolishness. So kirtan means the expression of the soul to glorify Krishna. Pure devotees of the Lord, they actually express themselves. Because the actual expression of the soul is to glorify Krishna. So pure devotees of Krishna, what they say is nothing like anything which anyone of this world says. That's what you see, they have these interfaith conferences, and they all go and express their ignorance of anything to do with spiritual life. Because they have not heard the messages coming from beyond the modes of material nature, coming from Vaikuntha. They have no actual connection with that realm. The Goloka Vani, the sound from the spiritual world, vibrated from the pure devotees, that is Vidyate Hridaya Granthis, Chidjante Sarva Sangshayaha, that cuts through all the ignorance on the heart and reaches to the soul. So those who have received that sound, that transcendental sound which awakens the soul to his pure consciousness, then he can also perform kirtan. Others, they chant, that's good, but unless one has that connection with actual spiritual connection, then that chanting won't carry us beyond the modes of material nature. So it's the duty of the the duty and the natural function of devotees to perform kirtan. Kirtan it means glorification of Krishna. So when one is devoid of the propensity for self-glorification, then one can perform kirtan. As long as one is desiring people should listen to me, it's like the crow is calling out. He wants others to hear, to take attention, to notice him. So when we are free from that propensity, then we can glorify Krishna. This is a dilemma for a preacher. The preacher wants to be heard. Otherwise, where's the preaching? As many people as possible should hear the message. But he should think himself that I'm simply let me act as an instrument. As Srila Prabhupada once told a group of his disciples, that actually I'm the only preacher in this movement and you are simply assisting me. And we can actually perform kirtan if we consider ourselves or pray for the benedict, pray for the blessing to be the instruments in the hands of our acharyas who are actually performing kirtan. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also, he called his sannyasis Jivanta Mridanga, that means living Mridanga, because they have to vibrate kirtan loudly. So we should make a big noise, drown out all the croaking of the crows. The sound of kirtan should drown out the overwhelming tumult of the croaking of the crows, so that in the world there will be nothing but kirtan. But we can become empowered to perform kirtan while we're making a big sound, at the same time we think that I personally am very, very small. So we should have long kirtans. How long? Endless. There's no end. It never ends. We can pray to join the Sankirtan party of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, any crows to make any protests? 2 questions. No, you always go like this. You want to establish Dvaita Vad? Panchatattva. Hare Krishna.
Nice explanation. Sometimes we are kind of getting tuned to chant nicely. And
what does it mean to be kind of tuned to? Means not fully. Kind of tuned.
Somehow we get into proper consciousness to chant. And then we feel some like spiritual emotions, and then immediately we have become self-conscious. Immediately, previously everything is nice, and then some kind of ecstasy comes, then immediately it's gone. What to do instead?
And then what happens?
Yeah, immediately.
And then we think, now I've become on the level of Raghunath Das Goswami.
Not really, but some self-talk. It's not anymore. We lose Krishna.
We lost it. So what should we do in such a circumstance? What should we do? Well, what do you suggest? Stop chanting Hare Krishna? You should go on chanting. Whatever happens, just go on chanting. It's not that, what happened? I was cheated of my spiritual experience. I resigned. Spiritual experiences, yeah, there may be some. But we have to go on with our service. What's the use of all this ecstasy and I'm so ecstatic that I didn't do any service today. I got stunned in ecstasy, I couldn't do any service. Better don't have any ecstasy. Go on with this service. Go on chanting. That is self-realization. To realize that I am the servant of Krishna eternally. So there may be this ecstasy, that ecstasy, the other ecstasy, or no ecstasy, but we have to serve. That's all. Just keep on going. That's the answer to all these questions. What should we do in this circumstance, that circumstance, this happens, that happens, the mind goes this way, the mind goes that way. Just go on chanting, go on doing the service. Krishna will appreciate that. We don't need to see any psychologist. Just go on chanting Hare Krishna. This adjustment, that adjustment. The real adjustment is just to adjust to the fact that we are meant to serve Krishna. Anything else? Hare Krishna. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Better ask, I would have forgotten.
So, what type of kirtan we have to do and what is what are the types of kirtan? What we do?
We should chant, say it in English and Tamil.
What type of kirtan we have to perform and what kind of kirtan is necessary?
The main kirtan is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are also many bona fide kirtans expressing various moods, various forms of glorification of Krishna, which are offered by our acharyas. The attitude in chanting should be Trinada Pisunitena Tarori Vasahishna Amanina Manadena. Because often we hear devotees chant something which is not Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. They start chanting their rounds, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And after a few minutes, it changes. And, the sounds become all merged together. Hare Krishna, is common. So, the benefit of chanting the holy names is not got from chanting something different to the holy names. This should be considered. You had a question? Yeah. Okay, ask it. Oh, wait a minute. What was it? It was about... No, I can summarize it, I think, and you can add any details if you like. This is something unrelated to the... Not directly related to the topics discussed in this class, but as it's a query from Gaur Bhagavan Prabhu which I suggested that we could discuss here in Srirangam. He had proposed in his working place to start weekly Bhagavad Gita classes, and the proposal was refused, saying that, well, it might upset or it's not allowed religion. He's working in Bangalore, Bangalore or something. What's it called? Bengaluru. In Texan Instruments? Texas Instruments. Multinational corporation. Someone comes home, I got a job in a multinational corporation. Really, what are you doing? Cleaning the toilet. International stool. And sometimes some Americans come there, and I get to clean up their stool. American stool. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Just pointing out the madness of this fascination with foreign things. It's a popular phase of Maya in India at the present time, to be enamored by everything foreign. Srila Prabhupada told the story of someone was offering someone else something to eat, just some meat. So he said, well, what kind of meat is it? Because he was a good Hindu, he didn't want to eat cow's meat. So he said, well, it's dog's meat. Dog's meat? Dog's meat. And that was killed by an Englishman. That dog was killed by an Englishman. Oh, really? Oh, okay. It's very good. High-class meat. High-class dog's meat. Just like last night we saw going around the Agraham, all the Brahmin dogs. Now the Brahmins are keeping dogs. Not ordinary dogs, they're Brahmin dogs. So, anyway, we're talking about Texas Instruments. And the rejoinder came that now we can have programs on, what was it? Personality development, stress management, after you've made your application.
No, before.
I see.
I've seen that only at Gate.
I see. So, well, you should have done a bit of research before you propose to do the Gita program. I would say, now you know. It's a bit late now. Often our devotees here in India especially, they preach in colleges and different institutions saying that we're doing stress management program or personality development program. Because if we say that we're teaching Bhagavad Gita, first of all, not many people will be interested and probably won't be allowed, which makes you wonder why they were trying to get independence from the British. In fact, I think at that time it would have been allowed, and then when they got the independence, they stopped this religious programs in the name of secularism. So the idea is in like a needle, out like a plow. One devotee was telling me he was doing this personality development programs, and he asked the students, what do you think is a good characteristics of good people? So they said kindness and what do materialistic people think of as being good? Kindness, sharing things with this empathy for others. So he wrote them all on the board, as they said, all these things. And what do you think are the bad things? And then the people said this, that. He wrote them all on the board. So then he said all these qualities, and for all the different qualities, we should be equal rights for all living beings. Don't criticize the crows. He's protesting. So anyway, he gave from Bhagavad Gita all the slokams for all the good qualities, matching what the people had said for good qualities and bad qualities. So then the people were very impressed. They said, oh, well, we didn't know that. So then he said, you see, and the Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to develop the good qualities and overcome the bad qualities. So like this, we can use it as a method to get in the door. So we may have to adopt different techniques to teach Bhagavad Gita. And like that, also if we say Bhagavad Gita, we're going to give Gita classes, not many people might be interested. So if you say personality development, and if you show them that all these things are in Gita, then they'll actually take an interest in Gita. Of course, in your company, if you were to do a personality development course, you probably have to be a bit more subtle than that.
You should be professional. They won't allow employee to have to be outside professional.
Yeah, has to be someone with a certificate. They go to some speculator who himself, there's no parampara, he just made up something. And he made a school of personality development, and he issues a certificate. So you have to go to a speculator to get a certificate like this. So we have to learn the techniques also, how to we have to learn the techniques of preaching. Preaching to people with no interest in Krishna consciousness, which means the vast majority of the population. So it means that how to catch their interest and bring it toward Krishna. If we walk up to someone, the average person, say, now you should surrender to Krishna. No. So we have to present that it's actually tricking them, that we have present that this is something what your ideas are very good, and this is something to help you to further your own ideas. The idea of, we're not challenging the idea that enjoying this material world is very good, but this is a way you can do it better, personality development. Of course, we have to be very careful with this kind of preaching, that we're so indirect and we never become direct, and we ourselves become like Mayavadis or something like this. Sometimes this is called bridge preaching. The idea that, you go halfway and you bring them halfway, and then you bring them back over the bridge to this side. But if you only stay on the bridge, or if you go to that side of the bridge, then what's the use? So these different things can be done, but distributing Srila Prabhupada's books and having public festivals, Harinam, that's the bombs for smashing illusion and soul-to-soul resuscitation. Hare Krishna. We'll finish there for now, and the next program is honoring Anukalpa Prasad. Right? It's ready? Okay. Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Very happy to see everyone happily chanting Hare Krishna. So let us go on chanting Hare Krishna and being happy, and endeavoring to bring more people to chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And when more and more people are chanting Hare Krishna, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be very happy. Yes. Ooh. Offered to Krishna? Not offered. Okay. If you want to offer it quickly, then I can distribute it. Here, go. Offer this. And when more and more people are chanting Hare Krishna, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be very happy. Yes. Ooh. Offered to Krishna? Not offered. Okay. If you want to offer it quickly, then I can distribute it. Here, go. Offer this. Sigram.